Now, in this week's Let's Talk Some Star Wars video, I want to discuss the results of a poll where I asked all of you, who does Star Wars belong to? And quite obviously, this question was open to interpretation, since I think we all understand that the intellectual property itself is owned by Disney. Nevertheless, an IP is worthless if there are no fans who want to pay money to consume its content or buy the affiliated merchandise. And it can never garner those fans in the first place without the creator who came up with and expanded upon the original idea. And that very same sentiment was echoed by a great many people in the comments, no matter how they actually voted. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let me, as usual, highlight the top-rated comment, or comments, since there were two at the top that were meant in good fun. And they came to us from Fast RO Gamer 14 and Albedo, who said Star Wars belongs to the high ground and the Senate, respectively. Anyway then, moving on to the next highest rated comment, which came to us from Ryan Senezeko, and I apologize if I just butchered your last name, and he voted for George Lucas and said of him, it's his creation, his vision, hence why episode 1 through 6 will be cherished in the future, despite flaws in the first two episodes. And honestly, I think Ryan begins to touch on what's the biggest problem or hurdle for Lucasfilm and Disney to overcome, and that's that no one else is George Lucas, and anything less for some people is never going to feel quite like the real Star Wars, which was a familiar theme in the comments, including this one by ShadowGeo117, who said, the Star Wars I know and love was created under George Lucas. His Star Wars is the true Star Wars. Even Simon Pegg, who is a friend of J.J. Abrams, the director of episodes 7 and 9, and a self-proclaimed prequel hater, has recently said that he thinks Star Wars is missing George Lucas. And I think the reason why episode 7 was received relatively well by most fans is that Abrams came in and tried very hard, maybe too hard for some, to capture the spirit of the original Star Wars movie. Hell, it was essentially an homage to the original trilogy, and though I don't think it was a perfect movie, I still liked it and understood why he did what he did. It was a welcoming back to Star Wars, and thanks to his mystery box approach, it had a lot of people intrigued about what was going to happen next. The Last Jedi then came out and felt like the opposite. It felt like someone telling you that they didn't care what Star Wars had once been, and this is what it will be now. And yes, make no mistake, some liked that approach. Some liked the new feel or direction that Rian Johnson gave us, while others looked at it and all they could say was, this isn't George Lucas' Star Wars, or even an attempt to honor it, and they were done. Which then brings us to a comment from Nick Richard, who said, Lucas created it, we grew up with it, Disney owns it. Star Wars is a huge universe. Whether you like some aspects and hate others, you definitely have a right to. But please keep in mind that some people may love the aspects you hate, and hate those you love. We just have to respect one's opinions. Debate, yes. Hatred, no. Namaste, my friends. And I love his message here, and it's one I try to preach often myself, that just because we disagree doesn't mean we have to hate each other, especially when we're all fans of the exact same thing. And even though I didn't personally enjoy The Last Jedi, I can understand and accept that some people did. In fact, I've met fellow fans who love the movie, and guess what? We had a civil, dare I say, even fun and enjoyable conversation about it. Next, I'm going to move on to a comment from my Discord server, where I asked everyone there the same question from the poll, obviously. And first up, we have a comment from Argobot, who said, George made Star Wars for himself, essentially. He made a movie that he would have wanted to see as a boy. In that essence, Star Wars is made for fans. It doesn't matter who owns it, who is making money, who is producing, or who has the licensing, as long as they remember who it's for. I can go to the store and buy the ingredients for a pizza, come home to my house that I worked hard to build and pay for, make the pizza and serve it on the dishes that my wife designed and made, but invite you to come and eat the pizza. Yes, it's my pizza, but I made it for you, my guest. That is something I haven't seen yet from Disney with Star Wars. We were invited to come eat pizza, and they served gluten-free bagel bites made with soy pepperoni and American cheese. And I love this analogy, I do, because it really hammers home the point of, yes, Disney does own Star Wars. It's theirs. No one can dispute that. But they purchased it in order to give a product to people. They're making it for the fans, or should be. And when I say give, I of course mean sell. They are trying to make money off of it, of course. But what's been mind-boggling to me, and I realize I've said this plenty of times before, is how Disney has treated some of their legacy characters. Yes, a debate can certainly be had on whether or not the character of Luke Skywalker was accurately depicted in The Last Jedi, if he really would have become disillusioned with the Jedi after all he'd been through, and good arguments can be made on both sides. But what's not so debatable is if fans had been given something more in line with the Luke they wanted, they would have been far more likely to buy new Luke Skywalker merchandise, new shirts, action figures, coffee mugs, and so on, with his older likeness on it. Instead, outside of some action figures, I don't see old Luke anywhere on merchandise, and if I did, I wouldn't be all that interested in buying it, and something tells me I'm not alone. And keep in mind, Luke Skywalker is my favorite character. Okay then, next up is another comment from my Discord server, and this time it's from Morden Greyhawk, who had this to say. As I mentioned in the response to your video, Disney and Lucasfilm own Star Wars, but it's the fans who pay for what they release. It's a two-way relationship. If they want people interested in the product, they need to give at least some thought or consideration to what the people want. As you've mentioned before, the fans are what turned Star Wars into what it is today. It could have just been another movie that faded into memory, but the fans are what kept it alive over the past few decades. Fans own the money that runs what they own. And this is kind of what I was getting at earlier. Your IP is worthless if you don't have fans or customers. And just like with pretty much any other business out there, if you don't strive to make your customers happy, you're probably going to lose them, and eventually your business isn't going to be profitable anymore. And then, well, that'll be that. And no, I'm not saying Star Wars is anywhere near the verge of failing and no longer being profitable. But when Disney purchased Lucasfilm from George Lucas, thus giving them the rights to Star Wars, they inherited a lot of fans, literally millions upon millions of fans of varying degrees. Some, of course, are more casual, while others are very hardcore. But one thing they almost all had in common was they were excited for the sequel trilogy, to put it mildly. In other words, Episode 7 was going to succeed. Fans of all levels were going to flock to it in droves. That was all but guaranteed. And as long as it was made by even remotely competent people, and was at least somewhat good, the movie was going to break records, which it did. After all, there are three things certain in life: death, taxes, and that a new Star Wars movie after a long hiatus without one is going to do extremely well at the box office. And as I discussed earlier, The Force Awakens was a relatively good movie and did what it needed to do. I'm not saying everyone or every fan loved it, but the majority seemed to. A year later than Rogue One also does very well in the wake of the well-received Episode 7, and because the excitement of Star Wars was still very much in the air, if you will. Not to mention, again, it was a good movie and enjoyed by most fans. The Last Jedi also did very, very well at the box office, which surprised no one. It was the continuation of the mystery started in Episode 7, and it was coming off two previously well-received movies, and for the most part, people were still pretty much excited about Star Wars being back. Critically, it was also given mostly glowing reviews. Fans, however, were divided on it, of course. So overall, no, it's not surprising it did so well financially. 6 months after that then, Solo comes out, and relatively speaking, it's a huge financial failure, especially for the Star Wars brand name. It actually lost money, and a lot of it, somewhere in the neighborhood of $80 million apparently. And though everyone wants to debate just why Solo failed, and there is a myriad of reasons that people will cite and claim was the most impactful, it all boils down to the simple fact that, relatively speaking again, not a lot of people went to see this movie. Either the concept didn't appeal to them, the advertising never reached them, they were turned off by the previous movie or movies, the excitement of Star Wars is now starting to fade, or maybe there was another reason why they didn't go see it. But all we know for sure is that they didn't go and see it. And what I'm trying to get at here is that even though, as Michael Pelton points out, Disney owns Star Wars and there is no real argument to be made against that, in my personal view, the ultimate fate of Star Wars belongs to the fans. They are the ones who decide whether or not to pay for its continued existence, the ones who will decide how long it endures for. Because, make no mistake, if Star Wars movies stop being profitable and merchandise sales dip or continue to dip, Disney will stop making new movies. It's that simple. However, if fans keep eating them up, or start eating them up again with Episode 9 and whatever comes after, Disney will keep cranking them out. Finally here, I want to get to a comment from the Lost Son who said of George Lucas, "It's his vision, his work, his passion. We were just lucky to experience it." And let me say, you are absolutely right about that, because I'm not here talking about Star Wars now if Lucas had never created it. And no matter how you want to look at it, this whole thing is, as George himself might say, a symbiotic circle, where one creates what others consume, which then allows the creator to keep creating something for others to consume. But now that original creator is out of the picture, and we all must decide if we want to accept or reject the Disney version of Star Wars. I don't think people are rejecting it out of hand, not when you consider how many supported the expanded universe, which Lucas certainly didn't have a very active role in. And as I've talked about many times before, there is a fine line between just straight up fan service or pandering to your fan base, and giving your customers what they want and expect out of a product that they're paying for. And there is absolutely no way, no matter who makes it, to create a Star Wars movie that every single fan will enjoy. And look, I don't envy Disney in their task of trying to carry Star Wars forward without Lucas. There are some out there who are never going to accept Star Wars without him, and it's their right to feel that way. There are also others out there who are going to like just about anything with the Star Wars logo slapped on it, and they don't care who makes it. And they too have every right to feel that way. Myself, and probably the vast majority of fans out there, are fussy but open-minded and reasonable people. We get it, Disney and Lucasfilm, that you're going to make mistakes with Star Wars. Nobody expects you to be perfect. Hell, Lucas wasn't perfect with Star Wars. And the thing is, so much of the damage caused to the fanbase by The Last Jedi could have been mitigated to a great extent if you'd just come out and said, you understand why some fans didn't like it. You didn't even have to say it was a mistake or apologize per se. You just needed to show some empathy towards the fans who didn't like it, and if you had, most of them would have stood down. Instead, you let this fallacy persist that most of your fans who didn't like it were sexists or bigots or whatever, and worse yet, you let some of your own associates perpetuate this misconception. And yeah, as I've argued elsewhere, you fear the power of social media and how you'll be perceived in it if you in any way, shape, or form defend the naysayers of The Last Jedi who have now been labeled as terrible people. But oh, the respect I would have had for you, that most Star Wars fans would have had for you if you defended your fan base anyway, and bucked the trend of bowing before the social media gods. Even the fans who love The Last Jedi, because a vast majority of them are good, very sensible people. They would have respected you too, and understood you were just trying to heal the fan base that they are also a part of. Yes, you own Star Wars now, Disney, but it doesn't belong to just you. It belongs to anyone who wants to be a part of it. And owning it won't mean much if nobody wants to be a part of it. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you who support me on Patreon, which I know I don't do enough of, but I really do appreciate all you guys and girls. And if you like what I do here and are interested in supporting me and gaining access to my Discord server, where we're always talking some Star Wars, I'll include a link to it in the description below. And with that said, it's your turn to now tell me who you think Star Wars belongs to and why, or to talk about anything I or others said in this video. So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.